It's been a long time since I felt the need to put my life out there like this, but honestly, I don't even know where else to go with this. I need to get it out. Maybe someone will read this and tell me I'm not crazy, or maybe I'll just feel better unloading it all here. Either way, here's how I found out my wife and my so-called friend stabbed me in the back while I was making dinner for both of them, no less. It was a Friday night, and we had plans to hang out with my buddy Kevin. I've known the guy since college. You know the type. Always cracking jokes, never taking anything too seriously. He'd been in and out of relationships and always came to me for advice, like I was some kind of guru on marriage because I'd been with my wife, Sarah, for 7 years. We've been married for 5, and I thought things were solid between us. That night, Kevin swung by around 6 with a bottle of wine, like he always did. I'd already started cooking, spaghetti and meatballs, her favorite. The house smelled amazing, and I was looking forward to just kicking back, having some drinks, and reminiscing about the good old days. Sarah was upstairs getting ready when Kevin showed up, and we ended up just shooting the breeze for a while in the kitchen. Now, I've never been the jealous type. I mean, sure, Kevin was charming in that kind of class clown who never grew up way, but I never thought twice about leaving him alone with Sarah. Hell, I trusted him. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife, my partner, the person I thought would have my back no matter what. But that night was different. Sarah came downstairs eventually, wearing this little dress I hadn't seen her in for a while. It was one of those tight ones that hugged all the right places, and yeah, she looked great, but something felt off. She gave Kevin this smile. Nothing obvious, just one of those quick glances that you'd miss if you weren't paying attention. But I was paying attention, and it didn't sit right with me. Still, I brushed it off. I didn't want to be that guy, you know? The insecure husband who reads into everything. So I kept cooking. The 3 of us hung out in the kitchen for a bit, laughing and talking while I stirred the sauce and prepped the garlic bread. It felt normal enough. But then Sarah excused herself to take a quick shower before dinner. That wasn't weird. She always liked to freshen up before we had company. But what happened next? Kevin's phone buzzed, and he looked at it, smirked, and said he'd be right back. He grabbed his beer and walked out of the kitchen. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I figured he was stepping outside for a smoke or something. But as the minutes ticked by, I started to wonder. I didn't hear the front door open or close, and I hadn't heard him go upstairs either. It was too quiet. I don't know what it was, but this uneasy feeling crept up my spine. Something wasn't right. The sauce was simmering, the bread was in the oven, but my gut was telling me to check things out. So I did. I turned the stove down, wiped my hands on a towel, and started walking through the house. The bathroom door was cracked open just a sliver, and that's when I heard it, her, laughing, quietly, but unmistakably her. And then, I heard Kevin's voice. I froze. My brain was racing, trying to piece it together, but deep down, I already knew what was happening. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to explode. I pushed the door open, and there they were, in my own shower. I don't even remember what I said at first. I think it was just a string of curses, yelling at both of them to get the hell out. Kevin was scrambling, trying to grab his clothes, stammering something about how it wasn't what it looked like. Sarah didn't even try to explain. She just stood there, wrapped in a towel, staring at me with this blank expression, like she'd been caught sneaking a cookie from the jar. Not cheating on her husband of 5 years with his best friend. My hands were shaking as I stormed out of the bathroom, grabbed my phone, and took a picture of the 2 of them for proof. Yeah, it was petty, but in that moment, I didn't care. I wanted something, anything, that would keep me from feeling like I was losing my mind. I wanted them to see what they'd done, to remember this moment as clearly as I would for the rest of my life. I told Kevin to get out of my house, and he actually had the audacity to argue with me. He started saying how he didn't want to leave without his side of the story, like there was any version of this where he wasn't a piece of shit. I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him toward the door, and let me tell you, it took everything in me not to knock him out right then and there. When he finally left, I turned back to Sarah. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still wrapped in that towel, looking like a deer in headlights. And that's when it hit me, the sheer weight of what had just happened. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built my life around, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And for what? A quick hookup in the shower? I didn't even know what to say. All I knew was that I couldn't stay in that house a second longer. So I grabbed my car keys, walked out the door, and drove. No destination, no plan, just driving, trying to outrun the anger, the betrayal, the heartbreak. But you can't outrun this kind of thing, can you? You can't just drive away from the fact that your wife and your best friend ripped your life apart while you were making them dinner. What the hell do you even do with that? I don't know how long I drove that night. It was late by the time I finally stopped, and my hands were still trembling on the steering wheel. I pulled into some random parking lot, a grocery store, I think, and just sat there in the dark. My head was spinning, replaying everything over and over. Her laugh, his voice, the look on her face when I caught them. It felt like my entire world had come crashing down in the span of a few minutes. I thought about calling someone, but who the hell do you call for something like this? I couldn't call my parents. I wasn't about to dump this on them. And most of my friends were more her friends these days, thanks to all the double dates and couples nights we'd done over the years. I guess that's what happens when you build your life around someone. You don't realize how much of yourself you've given away until it's gone. I ended up calling my brother, Mike. He's always been the no bullshit kind of guy, and I figured if anyone would tell me what to do, it'd be him. When he picked up, I didn't even try to sugarcoat it. I just said, Sarah cheated on me. With Kevin. In our shower. There was silence on the other end for a second, and then Mike said, "You want me to come over and beat the shit out of him?" It was such a Mike response that I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly what I needed to hear. Someone on my side. Someone who wasn't going to try to rationalize it or tell me to work it out. Just pure, unfiltered loyalty. Nah, I said, even though part of me wanted to say yes. He's not worth it. Neither of them are. Mike told me to come crash at his place, so I did. When I got there, he handed me a beer, sat me down on his couch, and let me vent. I told him everything. How it started with that weird look she gave Kevin, how I'd heard them in the bathroom, how she didn't even bother to apologize or explain when I caught them. Jesus, he said when I was done. What the hell is wrong with people? That was the million-dollar question, wasn't it? What the hell was wrong with people? How do you look someone in the eye every day, tell them you love them, and then turn around and do something like this? I'd always thought cheating was something that happened to other people. People in bad marriages, people who didn't communicate, people who didn't care about each other anymore. But that wasn't us. At least, I didn't think it was. Mike offered to let me stay as long as I needed, but I wasn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. I needed answers. I needed to know why this happened. And as much as I hated the thought of facing her again, I knew I couldn't just ghost her and pretend like our marriage hadn't been real. So the next morning, I drove back to the house. When I walked in, she was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her coffee cup like it held the answers to the universe. She looked up when she heard me, and for a second, I thought she might actually say something. But she didn't. She just sat there, waiting for me to speak first. "So," I said, leaning against the counter, "you gonna tell me why?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She chose this. She made her bed. Literally, and now she had to lie in it. "I don't know," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "It just happened." "Lie," I snapped. "Things like this don't just happen, Sarah. You made a choice." Both of you did. So don't sit there and act like you tripped and fell into the shower. She flinched, and for a moment, I thought she might actually argue with me. But then she just broke down, sobbing into her hands. I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. All I felt was anger. Hot, burning anger that made it hard to even look at her. I don't even know why I'm here, I said after a long silence. You clearly don't respect me, or our marriage. So what's the point? I do respect you, she said, her voice cracking. I love you, I don't. I cut her off. You don't get to say that. Not after what you did. Love doesn't look like this, Sarah. Love doesn't feel like this. She cried harder, but I wasn't about to let her tears manipulate me. I'd seen enough of this crap to know when someone was just trying to save their own ass. And that's exactly what this felt like. Damage control. Not regret. Not remorse. Just fear of losing the life she'd gotten so comfortable in. I packed a bag that day. I didn't say much else to her, and she didn't try to stop me. I told her I'd be in touch to figure out the logistics, what to do about the house, the bills, all the practical stuff. But emotionally, I was done. Or at least, I wanted to be. Kevin tried reaching out, of course. Left me a voicemail saying he wanted to clear the air. Whatever the hell that meant. I didn't listen to the whole thing. Just deleted it and blocked his number. As far as I'm concerned, he's dead to me. It's been a few weeks now, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything. Some days, I feel like I'm doing okay. Other days, it hits me all over again. The betrayal, the anger, the sadness. But one thing I do know, I'm not going back. They made their choices, and now I'm making mine. After I left the house that day, there was this overwhelming silence in my life. It was like the noise of our marriage. The conversations, the laughter, even the arguments, was suddenly gone, leaving behind this eerie quiet that I didn't know what to do with. You don't realize how much space someone takes up in your life until they're no longer there. And in my case, it wasn't just Sarah I lost. It was Kevin too. My wife. My best friend. The two people I thought I could count on most. I moved into a crappy extended stay motel while I tried to figure out my next move. It wasn't much, but it was cheap, and I needed cheap because, let's face it, divorce isn't exactly a budget-friendly process. The walls were thin, the bed was lumpy, and the coffee tasted like dishwater, but at least it was my space. No memories of them there. No ghosts of what I thought my life was. A couple of days after I left, Sarah started texting me. At first, it was just little things. Asking if I was okay. Saying she was sorry, that she wanted to talk. I ignored most of them. What was there to say? But then she sent this long message, laying everything out. Or at least, her version of it. According to her, it wasn't planned. She claimed she and Kevin had been flirting for a while, but never meant for it to go anywhere. She said she didn't know why it happened, that it was a moment of weakness, that it didn't mean anything. That last part pissed me off the most. It didn't mean anything? Are you kidding me? You don't blow up your marriage, your life, for something that doesn't mean anything. She begged me to come back, said we could go to counseling, that she'd do whatever it took to fix things. I almost laughed when I read that. Fix things? How the hell do you fix this? Glue it back together and pretend like nothing happened? No chance. I'd seen too many guys take that route, and it always ended the same way, with more heartbreak and more wasted years. Kevin tried to reach out, too. That took some nerve. I'll give him that. He emailed me this half-assed apology, saying he was sorry for what he did, but that he'd been struggling with some stuff and wasn't in the right headspace. Oh, come on. Like his mental state somehow justified screwing around with my wife? I didn't respond. Just flagged the email as spam and moved on. I spent those first couple of weeks in survival mode. Wake up, go to work, eat whatever was easiest, crash at night. Rinse and repeat. I didn't have the energy to do much else. But one night, Mike came by to check on me, and he wasn't having any of my I'm fine bullshit. You need to get your head straight, he said, handing me a six-pack and sitting down at the little motel table. You can't just hide out here forever. What the hell do you want me to do? I shot back. Throw a party? Celebrate the fact that my wife and my best friend stabbed me in the back? No, he said. But you're not gonna get your life together sitting here feeling sorry for yourself. Get mad. Get even. Do something. He was right, even if I didn't want to admit it. I'd been so caught up in the sadness and betrayal that I hadn't let myself feel the full extent of my anger. But it was there, bubbling under the surface, waiting to explode. And when it did, it wasn't pretty. The next day, I contacted a lawyer. If Sarah thought there was even a sliver of a chance we'd work things out, she was about to get a reality check. I wasn't dragging this out. I wasn't giving her a chance to manipulate me or play the victim. I wanted out, and I wanted out fast. The lawyer laid it all out for me. How we'd split the assets, what the divorce process would look like, the whole 9 yards. It was overwhelming, but it also gave me a sense of control, something I hadn't felt since this whole mess started. For the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I was taking action, and that felt good. I also decided to be honest with people about what happened. Not in a vindictive, let me destroy her reputation kind of way, but I wasn't going to lie or cover for her, either. When friends and family asked why I'd moved out, I told them the truth. Sarah cheated. Kevin was involved. End of story. The reactions were mixed. Some people were shocked. Others were sympathetic. A few, mostly her friends, tried to make excuses for her, saying things like, maybe she just made a mistake, or you should hear her side of the story. But you know what? I didn't care about her side anymore. She'd already shown me who she was. A couple of weeks after I filed for divorce, Sarah asked if we could meet in person to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I wanted to say my piece and close the door on this chapter of my life. We met at a coffee shop, and when she walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping, and there was this weird energy about her, like she was trying to hold herself together but was one wrong word away from falling apart. I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. She started talking, apologizing, crying, saying all the things she thought I wanted to hear. She said she loved me, that she regretted everything, that she'd do anything to make it right. But the whole time, all I could think was, too little, too late. When she finally stopped, I looked her in the eye and said, I'm not coming back, Sarah. This is over. She started crying again, but I didn't budge. I'd spent years putting her feelings ahead of mine, trying to keep her happy, and look where that got me. This time, I was choosing me. Walking out of that coffee shop was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also the most freeing. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. This isn't the ending I wanted for my marriage, but it's the one I got. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Sometimes, the only way forward is to burn the bridge and never look back. After walking out of that coffee shop, something shifted in me. It wasn't like everything suddenly got better. I wasn't magically over it or anything, but I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying this massive weight around and finally decided to set it down. The thing about betrayal is, it changes you. It forces you to look at the people in your life, at yourself, and decide what you're willing to tolerate. And for me, that line had been crossed. The divorce process was brutal. Anyone who's been through it will tell you that, but I think it's even worse when there's betrayal involved. Every meeting with the lawyer, every document I had to sign, felt like a reminder of what had happened. We didn't have kids, thank God, so that made things simpler, but untangling our finances and splitting the house was a nightmare. Sarah fought me on the house. She wanted to keep it, said it was our home, and that I should let her have it since I was the one who left. That was rich coming from the person who turned our home into a damn crime scene. I wasn't about to let her walk away with the one thing I'd worked so hard for. I fought for that house, and in the end, I won. It cost me a pretty penny, but it was worth it. I didn't keep it, though. Too many memories. As soon as the papers were signed, I sold it and used the money to start fresh. Kevin, on the other hand, completely disappeared. The coward didn't show his face after that day. Word got around about what he'd done, and from what I've heard, most of our mutual friends dropped him like a bad habit. Turns out, people don't take too kindly to backstabbing. Who knew? I haven't heard a word from him since, and I plan to keep it that way. Starting over wasn't easy. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, far enough away that I didn't have to worry about running into Sarah or anyone else who reminded me of her. I didn't take much with me, just the essentials. Everything else felt tainted somehow, like it belonged to a version of my life that no longer existed. At first, it was weird being alone. I'd been with Sarah for so long that I forgot what it was like to be by myself. But over time, I started to see it as an opportunity. I focused on myself for the first time in years. I hit the gym, picked up some hobbies I'd been neglecting, and even went back to therapy, something I'd tried briefly years ago but never stuck with. Talking to someone about everything that happened helped more than I expected. It gave me a place to unpack all the anger and sadness without letting it consume me. One of the hardest parts of moving on was trust. How do you trust anyone again after something like this? Every time I met someone new, I couldn't help but wonder if they were lying to me, if they had some hidden agenda. It was exhausting. But eventually, I realized I didn't want to live like that. If I let what Sarah and Kevin did dictate how I saw the world, then they won. And I'll be damned if I let them have that kind of power over me. So I started opening myself up again, little by little. It wasn't easy, and I'm not going to pretend like I didn't screw it up a few times. There were a couple of dates where I could tell the women felt like I was holding back, and they were right. I was. But as time went on, I learned to let go, to stop expecting the worst from people before they even had a chance to prove me wrong. It's been about a year now since I walked out of that coffee shop and told Sarah I was done. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. I've rebuilt my life from the ground up, and while it hasn't been perfect, it's been mine. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in control of my own story. I don't think about Sarah much anymore. She's just a chapter in my life. A painful one, sure, but also a lesson. She taught me the importance of boundaries, of self-respect, of knowing when to walk away. And Kevin? He's a footnote at best. Just a guy I used to know who made some terrible choices. I won't lie, there are still days when it stings. When I think about the life I thought I was building, the future I thought we had, and feel that pang of loss. But those days are fewer and farther between now. And the truth is, I'm better off without them. Without both of them. The other day, I was sitting on the balcony of my new place, drinking a beer and watching the sunset, and it hit me. I'm happy. Not in a fake, convince yourself you're fine kind of way, but genuinely, deeply happy. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not scared of it anymore. I've been through hell and come out the other side, and if I can survive that, I can survive anything. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes life has to fall apart before you can put it back together the right way. Betrayal sucks. Heartbreak sucks. But they don't define you. What you do after, that's what matters. And me? I'm moving forward, one step at a time.